Welcome, everybody. I'm Pat Schwadron. I'm career counselor supervisor at the Career Center of the Entertainment Community Fund, as you all know, formerly known as the Actors Fund. And we're just delighted that Jamal Story has made this happen, that we have a three-part webinar series about the business of the dance business. And we were very fortunate that Jamal brought in a grant. And we will, we'll send out to you the information about all of this later from the state, NISCA, New York State, NISCA, Commission on the Arts, right? The Council on the Arts. And also from another donation by Kaylee Nguyen. So last week we covered certain topics about just the different dance forms and unions, and we do have a recording of that, and we will make that available to people, and ultimately it will be on Jamal's website as well, which is jamalstory.com. So I encourage you all to take a look at that. And because a lot of the information that Jamal is sharing with us today, he is also making available on his website. And the Entertainment Community Fund, as you may know, many of you, since I know you're fans and followers, was created in the late 1800s as a burial society because good Christian cemeteries were not accepting actors after John Wilkes Booth assassinated Abraham Lincoln. So it started as a burial society, which was not uncommon in the 1800s, that communities had their own burial plots, right? So out of that, there was a funder who was a journalist in New York who created the Actors Fund so that there could be a cemetery, which apparently has a little place in Brooklyn still.
Oh, wow.
That grew with it growing into what it is now, which is a national human services agency that really addresses all the challenges and concerns of individual artists in our country. And so in addition to career services and management, that for this topic, we also, of course, and I hope you all know about the fund, you go to entertainmentcommunity.org and click around and see, is about every aspect of health services, health insurance, housing, and dealing with any kind of crisis that, does come no matter what. And our understanding at the Career Center is that we are in a business where it is normal to have lots of interruptions and lots of change. And people who come into the fund are being received by people who get it. That this is the challenge of being a working artist, is that you're going to be dealing with change and sudden change and changing course and change in the industry, changing you all the time. So it's great to have this information about what do I know about the business that I'm invested in. The more I know, or the more I know where to get the information, the better I can address when these things come before me. So, okay, Jamal, tell us right now, let everybody know what you're doing and where you are.
I am in Dallas, Texas, and I decided to do this one from a different location. This is a different loved one's place that I'm calling office today. But I'm in Dallas, Texas, working with for the Dallas Opera in their production of Romeo and Juliet, and it's a beautiful production, I gotta say. So I'm here dancing, I'm here working, and doing all the other things, including this.
Great. So do you want to give us why? Thank you. People who are here, I usually do this and I got so concerned about mechanics. Please tell us where you are. So the people who, please put in the chat where you're coming in from. And also, we do have a Q&A. You can see at the bottom of your screen. If you have a specific question in response to a topic that Jamal covers, please put in the Q&A, because that way we'll make sure that we get it to Jamal. We're always
Yeah.
happy to see comments in the chat, but you know, as they scroll down, we may lose something. So if you have a content related question, Q&A, if you just feel like saying, yay, Jamal, you can put that in the chat.
Yeah, and I want to just add
Yeah.
add Patch for everyone in the room that when you can put these questions in the chat at any point, so that if I'm going over something that you're wanting to know information about right now, it's fine. Patch and I are definitely catering this to you all. So
Yeah.
you know, feel free to throw it in there, and I may answer it in the middle. It doesn't necessarily have to be at the end of the entire thing. But I'll have everything available to show again if I need to.
Why, thanks.
Mhm.
So you're performing and you do, and you continue to, and
Yes.
choreograph and all that. So, you know, I went through last time, I went through a whole history of your career. I think a lot of people know about you. I hope they look up on Jamal Story to find out, but you know, give us a little bit of a timeline, because what I brought up last week with you is, how did you get to this place in your life and career where you're so invested in sharing information
Mhm.
about the business? What was your development in terms of becoming a person who wants to
Mhm.
educate other people?
Good question. Good question. And I think last time I talked a little bit about how I was invited into the union, invited onto the board of SAG after the New York local board, and how that that conversation went with the president of the entire New York local board coming to me. We talked about that, but I didn't go back actually probably as far as I should have. I've been interested in this. A lot of my interest in sort of all of this stuff happened out of a need to understand how everything worked contractually in different spaces. And that was really challenging. Sort of, oh wow, I didn't think about the landline. I'm just gonna grab it.
So
Just in case, I'll just be able to shut it down. So when I look, but when I first started looking at these contracts, I didn't understand the differences. And then I remember having a really nasty taste in my mouth with SAG-AFTRA, because suddenly, you know, here was this union, this organization or this body or this entity that needed money from me and wasn't making enough money. And, you know, so a lot of this came out of my interest in understanding, how does this all work? And then also too, being able to help people who are not dancers understand how we work, you know, and that came out of noticing that a lot of the lack of respect for dance as a career comes out of people not understanding how independent contracting works for us, and how all of that, the same things that I'm explaining in these webinars or in this webinar series, is the stuff that I found myself over the years telling the people in my family, telling the people in other industries, explaining to, you know, folks who are not artists, so that they could have a better understanding of the fact that no, it is a career. There are the same kinds of entities that interface with employees in the corporate world. We have them too. You know, our unions are all part of the AFL-CIO, just like the unions that, you know, the construction workers and nurses, pilots. These unions we have these professional organizations too. And all of those things help people to understand that this is a profession and we are professionals, right? And that was a big thing. One of the reasons, for example, well, right now I'm wearing a collared shirt. One of the reasons that when I'm in rehearsals, it was by accident one day, and then I started to hold on to it as a warm-up. If I have old collared shirts that are too frazzled or, you know, can't be worn in that way, I'll use them as warm-ups. I'll wear them, I'll add them on as warm-ups, because it becomes sort of an avatar for me about the profession as other people are looking at it, even if they don't understand that. For me, that's the messaging that, you know what, I am still at work. I am at the office right now, right? And so when someone asks, why are you wearing that? Well, no, this is a warm-up, but
this is
this is
what I
a warm-up
wear.
also. So I think all of that helped with the development of me sort of into this realm. But a lot of it had to do with just people who are already inside of union activity and union work coming to me and saying, hey, you clearly have a lot of information. You seem to have some reach to the dance community. We would like you to use that reach with us. You know, and just to be clear, even though the first session was mostly on unions, you know, I'm dealing with a whole career, and of course, some of our jobs are under unions, and some of them are non-jurisdictional, and there are other places. So it is not. So I wanted to make clear that I'm not necessarily. I don't work for the union. I mean, we are the union as performers that are members. It's us. We're the union. It's not something outside of us. At the same time, the union has actual staff, and Janae was here with us last time. She works at the union for the union as a staff person, different from being on the board, you know, which I was for quite some time. Did I answer the question? I just realized.
Yes, you did. You did. And the good thing about having the recordings, we'll have all three, is that people can go back and get more of the stories. But the fact is too, is that your career, you have that you have been performing in all these different genres of dance. In other words, so, and that's and you never hesitated to try. So I think that's, we're going to get to the topic today, but it is something to do with branding, finally.
So yeah, fine, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, just to I just want to pick up on that. To your right, a lot of it, even in terms of contracting, like what is this? When does my agent step in, and which part is me? Like I had all the questions that I think a lot of dancers have. I had them too. I was just driven to get answers to them. And one of the big things that I'm still branding is something that I'm still trying to figure out. How to do, you know, and how to make happen. I understand the concept. Last time we talked about branding, and we were basically working with a definition. There's several out there, but branding is your brand is a promise to the audience about what you are selling or presenting, and all of the things that go with that. So, you know, I can't remember what example I used, but it would be something like, you know, we know that when we go into Nike, we're going to get shoes, we might get clothes, they've expanded, you know, there's a lot of stuff that Nike sells. The minute they start selling cell phones, we're going to go, isn't that a little off brand? And so we talked a little bit about all of the things that for us, because our bodies are our instruments, then of course they become a part of the brand and a part of the presentation. And we talked a little bit about bodies in terms of that, just, you know, what silhouette, you know, is working for your brand, for what it is you're presenting. But what I wanted to do was sort of bring, and I didn't do this last time, I should have, I wanted to bring together the concept of your brand, your articulation of that in social media spaces and content creation, and then and sort of lumped in with the unions to give a kind of an example of how that can all work.
Hang on 1 second. We have a request from the backstage. If you could go to your chat and put to everyone.
Oh, yes. I keep forgetting that that's the default, that the default isn't everyone here. So sorry. All
right.
Okay,
listen,
so I think did that come to everyone?
You know, this is live action.
This is listen, this is what we like. This is why people go to Broadway and go to see shows. This is what they want to see.
All right.
So yeah, so no, okay, cool. I'm sorted, and that's good. I am actually seeing the chat too in real time. Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's say, so you know, everyone's making content. I try to make some too, every now and then. But let's say that you are a content creator, you're a dancer, and you're making content on TikTok, and you're making it, and then and now you're making money. Someone has come to you, some advertisers come to you, or TikTok has said, you know, hey, advertisers are wanting to advertise on your page or around your stuff. We're gonna now monetize, and you're gonna get paid, etc. Right? Well, so the thing is, right away, if you're making dance content, it makes sense that you might perceive yourself as a dancer only in that context, right? And but so let's go. I want to share. I'm gonna now I'm gonna make this much bigger so that I can share my screen and let you see this. Okay, so what we have here, what you're looking at is a chart of progressive. I did this before, a version of this before, and I'm just going to use some of these slides. I use progressive insurance, right? So let's say instead of flow, they want you because you've got all this content that's really, really, really fantastic. And so they're going to advertise on your page as well. You're not being hired to be in a commercial. No, the company wants to advertise her commercials on your page, right? Because you have so much following, you have so many views, there's so many people coming to your content, right? Well, ordinarily, let's take you out of it. Ordinarily, Progressive will use an ad agency. I didn't put that in here, but there's an ad agency in this area with hires, right? And then we're going to get to a producer for the project. And then that project person's going to hire the creatives and then choose the talent, right? That's sort of how this would work without social media, you or anybody else. But in the context of if you're an influencer, then now you become Netflix. You become the whatever the organization is that has the content, that's you, right? So they made a movie and they hired a choreographer and then they hired a dancer or several dancers. You are an influencer. Your content, it's all on TikTok. You're making it on a regular basis. And then you hired a choreographer that happens to be you. And then you hired a dancer that also happens to be you. So in this context, you are more than one thing. You're the dancer, you're the choreographer, and you're the influencer, right? And if you're the influencer, then it means that we're comparing you to Netflix inside of the structure of how all of this would work for Progressive insurance, right? So and again, there's an ad agency in between, in the middle of all of this, and we'll get to that later, right? But this is a very basic model to show you you're in the food chain, you're doing all the work, right? And so in the context of doing all the work, what do I mean? You're the influencer, you're the choreographer, and the dancer. Your talent this is where you are in both places, and this is how you want to see yourself in a business context as an influencer. And right now, you all, I'm saying I'm using influencer very, very broadly to include. Obviously, it's not just dancers, but include dancers, choreographers, creatives who are making really, really fantastic content that we all want to see. And that's the reason that it's so popular, right? And so then,
to
yes,
back up, the influencer is actually a category, right?
it is now.
Within SAG-AFTRA?
Yes.
Can you explain that?
Right, and I'm gonna get there. But it's a good. It's a question that's very important. We have different categories under the union that are of constituencies represented under the SAG-AFTRA union specifically, right? There are singers, there are dancers, there are recording artists, there are background performers, there are stunt people, and there are broadcasters. I don't know if I mentioned them, but they're all under the umbrella of SAG-AFTRA members. Right. And so influencer is now added as a category of members. And how each one of these constituencies articulate with the union in terms of how we're paid, how our contracts are negotiated matters. Right. So broadcasters are totally different in terms of how their contracts are dealt with, because they are really employees of the shops where they work. Right, but they still are able to be represented under SAG-AFTRA because they have a different contract negotiation entirely than actors and dancers and stunt performers, for example, and background performers who all work under the TV theatrical contract, for example. So it's a different bargaining situation in terms of the how that works, but it's a category nevertheless. There is now an influencer category at SAG-AFTRA. And I'll delve a little bit deeper into that shortly.
Okay.
But right here, I just want to really pull out this portion of it that if it's a gig, we're calling it the gig, right? On a normal, any other gig you do, a television show, a music video, something, you have the dancer, choreographer, a writer or concept, someone who made it, someone who made it up. You have a wardrobe person or people, and then you have hair and makeup folks, right? These are just some of the jobs on a gig that you might do as a dancer, right? Well, those gigs are all represented by different unions, or all covered by different unions. So in this case, for obviously, as I spoke about last time, you know, dancers, we work under all kinds, you know, all kinds of union contracts, equity contracts, SAG-AFTRA contracts, AGMA contracts. Sometimes it just depends. For this example, we're using SAG-AFTRA because that's the overarching union for these contracts and for the influencers that you become in a really poppin' TikTok scenario over some years, right? Well, the choreographer, there's a choreographers guild that is in formation. It's you know, embryonic right now, but it does exist, right? And that's gonna cover choreographers once we get that popping. The writers, as you know, there's a WGA, the Writers Guild. They just had a strike before SAG-AFTRA. Wardrobe, IATSE Local 764. There's a union for them. Hair and makeup, there's a union for them as well. IATSE Local 706. Well, obviously, if it's content and it's a video, SAG-AFTRA and all of these other unions have already sorted out what the minimums are for those jobs. I'm just putting in dollar signs right now because we're keeping this on archive, and we're hoping that over the years, these minimums go up because we're negotiating them that way. Every single union is negotiating with the other side to get those minimums up, right? And again, the minimums up. We're not even talking about negotiating it over that based on talent and all that other kind of stuff, right? We're just talking minimums. But every single one of these unions publishes minimums, right? That they are not, that the employers on these gigs are not supposed to pay below. All right. And that include, I just put a few of them. We haven't even got to the rest of the people who are on the credits, right? The gaffers, the grips, the video people, sound people, whoever it is, right? Well, if you are making content, you're doing all of it. You are all of these things. You're the dancer, the choreographer, the writer, you wrote it, you conceived it, your wardrobe, your hair and makeup. And so then that should be how you start to charge, right? I'm gonna stop my screen share for a second. That's how you should start to charge. Don't let it go for less than whatever all of that would be, because you're doing all of the work, right? So there has to be a pathway for that to work out, right? You're doing, is this making sense so far, Patch? Am I moving?
Yeah, no, it is, because part of, you know, our topic today was about money and ethics, right? So this is about fair pay for the work,
right? Yeah,
right?
and yes, and then understanding where you are in the content creation world, right? I know, and part of the reason that this conversation is important is I remember when the influencer agreement came out. There's an influencer agreement. I'm going to get. I promise I'll get there. But when that contract or when that agreement came out, there was a lot of pushback. A lot of dancers, you know, kind of went, seems like SAG-AFTRA ignores us. We're here, and then wants to get more memberships. So now you create a pathway for these influencers to you know, become union if they want to be. It's an and. It's an and, you know, we're not trying to do away with any constituency. We're growing membership, right? But the other thing is the union understands that a lot of us are the content creators who become influencers. And so if for those of us who aren't getting there through our copious work on television shows and film, then if you're making money this way, you should have access to the union for pension and health if you want it, for all of those discounts and things that I talked about before, and for protection, for basic contract protection, so that you have resources, staff resources at the union to help out if you get into trouble, right? So let me go back to my screen share. Let's see where, okay, that's where I have to push share. And so this is that gives you a context for what that looks like, understanding. And if you ever want to know what these rates are, again, each one of these unions has published minimums for different contracts that fall underneath them. Okay. And so now let's get to I'm going to now start answering the question, this other piece of it. In this example, what I left out is the ad agency, right? Most of them go through ad agencies to get to the content, to get to the advertisements and the placement of them and things like that. The problem is that because of how federal labor law works, and all of the agreements therein involved in unions and unionism across the country, you can't get paid under for pension and health. You can't be a part of someone's pension and health as an individual over there. You have to be an employee of something. So what happens is SAG-AFTRA has created a pathway for you to also be the ad agency, right? And so in that context, they need for you to, what they get the influencers to do is start your own company. You need to have a company that you are doing all of this business through, and then you become an employee of your own company. Yeah. You're paying yourself. And as you're paying yourself, you become an employee that can then articulate legally inside of a pension and health offering under a union, right? But you have to have that part first, because what would happen is the ad agency would pay the 19% that is in our case as SAG-AFTRA, I believe that number is 19%, that has to be paid on top of all the contracts for pension and health for us. Yeah, some of it in most contexts, some of it comes out of the employee pocket, and then the rest of it comes out of the employer pocket. It just depends. That those numbers are different. They vary from company to company. But the idea is someone's got to pay somewhere. There's got to be some money for your pension and health. And all of our contracts for SAG-AFTRA are at least the big ones that we discussed before are negotiated in such a way where that's a part of the deal. So one of the reasons that people don't want to go union, or the companies don't want to use union employees, is that that's a part of it. Is that you got to pay for the whole employee, not just the part of it that you want to pay for, which is the talent, right? So that's part of the consideration in this example, is that you become the ad agency as well, so that you have a pathway to pension and health in the union, right? But the idea is, again, you're the content producer, you're the dancer, you're the choreographer, you're the creative. You are the creative, and you are also this big entity. You are also right there stacked with the other side. So part of the thing is, when I explained it that way, it helps to contextualize you so that you won't ever make the mistake of thinking, I am just a dancer, and you've gone for the influencer. No. I am the dancer, I am the influencer, I'm the choreographer, I'm all the things, right? And so that you have a bigger sense of how that money works. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So you were mentioning last week, and that's the case in your career, that you've worked under in so many different relationships, like working for the opera right now. Mm-hmm. Is it, different kind of contract from when you work on a film. So
right. Yes.
So how you negotiate your pay is somehow
for this. Well, for this, this is totally different. I'm doing this under, this is AGMA, different union altogether, right? And so what's happened is with SAG-AFTRA, it's movie studios, right? If it's the TV theatrical contract, it's the movie studios, it's the Warner Brothers and Paramount and all that, plus Netflix, plus Hulu, plus whoever is inside of that collective of folks, right? With equity, again, it's the same idea. It's the producers league, right? Side note, for those of you who do a lot of equity work, there's always this talk about the Disney equity, which is, it's a different equity altogether. Their rules are so different. It's because Disney has a separate negotiation with Actors Equity for their contracts. Meaning, rather than share the resources with the other producers who came together and said, we're going to get a lawyer, we're going to get a blah, 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 we're going to do that, and we're going to split the cost of all those things so that we can fight the SAG after the union. No, Disney said, no, we want to have our own negotiation because we're not satisfied with the way that, with whatever concessions that the producers league that they're making. We don't like it. We want to be able to do 9 shows a week if we under certain circumstances. So that's something to know about how the negotiation works, right? Back to this though, in the AGMA context, what you're dealing with is, rather than all of the different companies that are members of AGMA coming together, what it is this in-house warfare, it's in-house negotiation. So in this case, Dallas Opera, the people who are delegates and committee members and negotiating folks for them, they are having the argument with the people who are working the contract on a regular basis at the Dallas Opera, and it's all stays in-house. Same with the Alvin Ailey American Dance Theater, same with San Francisco Opera, same with American Ballet Theater, right? All of these are AGMA companies. They have totally different contracts because those contracts are negotiated based on, and they should be, based on different standards that are specific to them. So in this context, I'm working under a contract that has been negotiated, that has a minimum for dancers, that has specific rules that have to be obeyed, and some of those things are in our favor, and some of those things are in management's favor, because again, we had to negotiate to get there, right? And you want to think in terms. I mean, I always think in terms of buying a car, right? You go to buy a car. You know, the car salesman, they have all the tricks, they know all the things, they know what to say, they understand things about the car and the industry that you just won't, right? So if you don't know those things and you're not sure what to look for, of course, you go to an uncle or somebody and go, hey, listen, you've done this, you know how this works. Or you go, if you even better, if you have someone in your family who has worked in car sales, you take them, because you want to have help on your side of that negotiation for that car to get the best price. It is exactly the same concept. It is called collective bargaining. That's what all of that for a reason. Well, collective bargaining, because you have either the producers league, all of them together, or you have, all of the record labels or all of the movie studios, whomever, whoever the collective is. But the bargaining part is straight up negotiation. That's what it is. So that's how I'm working under this contract. Fortunately, the work has been done. Yeah, I pay my AGMA dues, but that's part of the reason, because I know what the rate is. And if they don't pay it, now I have a union to go to and say, hey, listen, I didn't get a check. They haven't paid me. Could you please help? Yes, there's an agent that you could go to as well, but the idea is that even if you're not represented, you don't, let's say you're working in this industry and you don't have an agent because you don't do the jobs that would be negotiated by them. One of the reasons that I don't use my agent, for example, for AGMA, for a lot of AGMA work, is that the contracts are not financially big enough to warrant her coming in and then helping with it, and then I'm paying her the 10%. Sometimes usually that doesn't get negotiated on top, and by on top, I mean here's what I'm making, and they're gonna pay me this. They're gonna pay my agent 10% of this, versus this is what they're paying me, and I pay my agent 10% of this. That's what I mean by on top, right? So those are, and we can get to that too when we get down to the other side of this conversation a little later on to agency. But that's how the AGMA, that's the benefit of an AGMA contract, is that I don't have to worry about it. We know what the rates are, they're published. And then if it goes wrong, I can call AGMA and say, look, do something, please. Yeah. Do something on my behalf. And by the way, this question comes up all the time. I have not seen it happen in my career where the agent sells out. I mean, where the union sells out the performer. I've heard agents say that, well, it's the union's fault. They just didn't blah, 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 or they snitched on such and such. No, there's nothing in it for the union to do that. The union, we are the union once again. That's just important I can't stress it enough. I wanted to go back to, let me see, let's see if I can get back to my screen. You would think at this point in the game that I'm an expert at Zoom. And alas, I am not. So moving on. Okay, so here's the part where we're going to talk about. I'm going to get to pension and health later a little bit more, but I'm using Nike in this one to just discuss the way that it works in terms of the pay on the other side, right? So in a normal example, and by normal, I shouldn't say normal, I should say in the example, the workforce example that we're most familiar with, where we work for a big company and we get paid on it, we're salaried employees, we get paid on a regular basis, and some of the stuff comes out of the check. It's never growth. There's a gross, and then there's all the stuff that comes out, and then we get to what that is, right? So a piece of what you are putting away for retirement, they're adding to the pension directly. And then a piece of it comes out of every check. This shouldn't exist. This little green one over here, it's not quite the same. They're paying for some of your pension and health, and then you're paying some of your pension and health, but it's going into your retirement over a period of time, so that when you finally quit working for Nike at age 65 or whenever that is, then you'll start getting your retirement checks. And that's how that works. That's the general model that we all kind of understand, right? For us, again, let's just to make the comparison clear, Nike, you are Nike. Because you're self-employed. You're your own boss. You're your own entity, right? For all of your union gigs, they're going to be W-2, because again, federal labor law says that that's how that has to work, right? And so it's all of that is going into a 401k of some sort somewhere. You have a 401k, and it's going into it unless you elected, and went out of your way to elect not to. Everything else that you make is 1099, well, for the most part, is 1099. And the 1099 means, hey, the contract was, we're paying you $2,000. Here's your $2,000. You deal with all the other stuff. You deal with the taxes. You deal with the other things and the other stuff. This stuff goes into your 401k. Well, what happens to this? Well, so there's this thing called the IRS. and what they want is their percentage of whatever that is you're supposed to be paying on the money that you're making. Meaning you get to collect your checks, you get to collect them, and then some point down the line during the course of it, when it's time, the companies that you've been working for that have been issuing you those 1099s, those companies will report to Uncle Sam, we paid Jamal this much, and someone else is saying we paid Jamal this. Oh yeah, and don't forget about this. And those are all 1099s. I got the full amount of each of those checks, and I haven't paid anything. Well, if I'm self-employed, then now I have to pay a self-employment tax, right? And that self-employment tax is going to cover all of the stuff that I would ordinarily be paying out of every check if I were working for Nike as an employee, right? So I'm responsible for making all of that happen at the end of every year. I have to do that, right? And so the thing to know is that what happens tax-wise is you have to reconcile the stuff that you've already paid taxes on, those W-2 jobs, with the stuff that you haven't paid any taxes on. And that's gonna determine a whole lot. Is there a rhyme or reason or any of that stuff with how that works? Sure, there is, and there are charts that can show you. I'm gonna pull up one now, just for the sake of the Zoom, to show you how this can work. So this is just a chart for 2022 about how you're taxed. What's your income? It's all income based, right? The 10, the 12, 22%. For single filers, this is me, right? If I made between 44,000 and 95,000 pretty much, then I'm going to be taxed in this realm. I'm going to be 22% is how much I'm responsible for making sure comes out. And so this is all available online. You can find this out, but this is what's being used to determine how that works and what you're responsible for. So, you can do over the course of the year some basic math to figure out, okay, well, at the end of the year, what am I going to owe on these 1099s? Now, in the context of all of that, you got to pay all of this. But you get to also tell the government, hey, listen, because I am self-employed and I am Nike, I had expenses. I had to pay, I had to incur costs. So those become write-offs, right? Anything that I needed to purchase as part of the gig, anything that travel that wasn't reimbursed, I get to write it off. If I worked a job somewhere and I didn't get to, and I was in the city and no one gave me per diem, I get to write off those meals. All of that becomes part of the stuff I'm telling Uncle Sam, no. I may not have paid you, but I did pay some of these taxes that would be under self-employment tax that, that I'm responsible for. I did it already. And those are your write-offs. And so of course, then we get into that's the basic explanation, right? Then we get into what things can you write off. And the SAG-AFTRA site has charts, functional charts that you can use that will help organize you about what is appropriate to write off and what isn't, right? There's a lot that you can't. One of the conversations I had with Sandra Karras, she's a brilliant performing artist who I think she currently still sits on both the SAG-AFTRA board and the equity board. And she is also, she has a law degree. I don't know that she is a lawyer. I think she is, who does taxes for performers at equity. So this is the person that is my go-to. And the argument I'm always having with her is, why can't I write off my gym membership? I don't understand why I can't write off. I don't understand why I can't do that. It's my body. I have to look like this. Somebody said it. So why can't I write it off? And the truth of the matter is, the time that you can write it off, this is something good to understand about contracting, right? I can write off my gym membership if the contract that I'm working, union or otherwise, states somewhere that I am responsible for looking a certain way or maintaining a certain level of fitness or having a muscular build or not falling below a certain weight or getting above a certain weight or whatever. Sometimes it's a costume thing or it's a floor thing or whatever the case is. If there are things like that in the contract, if there's language like that in the contract, and the employer has not provided a pathway for you to meet that requirement, now I can write off my gym membership. But I can only write it off for the time that I'm working under that contract. I can't do it for the whole year. So one approach is, if you're doing these other contracts, especially the ones that I'm talking, mostly the ones that haven't been negotiated, if you're working those contracts, you can have that in it. Tell the employer, look, I'm going to do this for you for this amount of money, but what I need for you to do is put this language in the contract, so that and it's not going to cost them anything. All it does is it shows the IRS that no, you are required to do it for work purposes, that it isn't arbitrary, it isn't random, that's what it is. I understand that Robert De Niro, when he was making Raging Bull, wasn't able to write off his gym membership either. But the reason for that is that his employers, that film provided him with trainers that he could use. He did extra stuff beyond that, and he went the whole way, but he couldn't write off any of it because they said, yes, no, we're requiring this. Also, here is your trainer. Here's some water. go on about your life. So that's something to know about. All of those write-offs, they'll help you to offset your tax liability at the end of the year as an independent contractor, self-employed. Right now, the influencer agreement, where that again, for that, you're a self-employed person. Now it gives you the influencer agreement with SAG-AFTRA gives you a pathway to work to have pension and health that is already established through the union. Otherwise, I've had my own health insurance for quite some time. I actually, during hardship, was able through the Entertainment Community Fund to qualify for different health insurance. And during that period, that then no longer becomes a concern, right? But ordinarily, I have been paying my own health insurance all of this time as an independent contractor. And do I get to write off that as an expense? Absolutely. Absolutely. How are we doing? Is this clear, Patch? Is this all making?
No, you're doing fine. I mean, if you want to take a little break from your continuum, we have two questions that
Yes.
aren't necessarily, but this is our break.
Yeah.
So there's the questions. Sophia Silver, who has been very attentive
Yes.
throughout, she's wondering about how to audition and join a dance company for mature dancers 45 plus. Might be
That's
part
a
of our
good one.
topic next
It's gonna
week,
be
but
part
it's
of
a
our
good
next week
one.
topic. Okay, so Sophia, let me say that. Let me say
Yeah.
this. Part of it, and this will be the sneak preview for next week.
Yeah.
Because I am definitely in the age bracket, right? So part of it has to do with you want to audition the job as well. It's something that I try to teach young dancers to do also. But if you're earlier in your career, you oftentimes don't have the options to just pick and choose which gigs you want to take. Sometimes you just, and what I did is I just did it all. I'll do that gig, I'll do that Kohler show at this convention show where I'm tapping on like in a convention center at a welcome to Kohler kind of whatever. I took all the gigs, I did all the gigs. But at this point, now you want to start to audition the gig. And by that, you go through and who's choreographing it? Do you know them? That's a part of it. I just and I'll tell this story and then I promise to save the rest of it for next time, Patch. But
Yeah.
I just there was an opera gig. I have a friend who was high up in a position for one of the opera companies, and so he sent me an invitation to audition for a few operas, and of course I went, sure, I'm gonna submit, and I did. I submitted, and then from that submission, the video submission, they do invitations or they invite people to audition. And for one of those, I was like, I'm going in, that's no problem. And for the other one, I went, oh, I don't know if I can make it through that. I don't know that I can actually do that at this age. So the choreographer who knows me she actually saw it. And she said, she texted, wait, are you coming into this? Are you coming into this audition? And I said, listen. I was invited to submit. I was not going to turn a blind eye to that because I appreciate the relationship and the help and the looking out. So of course I submitted, but you also know me, I'm ancient. If you don't think I can make it through the please, by all means, pay me dust and just know that's the reality. And so then she says, well, it's a lot of dancing, and it's this, and then it turned out that I wasn't available for the actual gig anyway because it overlaps with this one. So, but the point that I'm making is that a lot of that at this point becomes about seeing about the gig, doing a little bit more of that work, however you can, to sort of work around so that you're not just killing yourself auditioning for everything at this point with this body, to contend with.
Yeah. I mean, it's the networking and working with people, which is, and then how do you get to know more people?
Then that's a networking. It's just, it's the networking thing. I find that in the entertainment industry across the board, when I talk to everyone, musicians, dancers, actors, everyone, the consistent thing that comes around is whom do you know? With whom do you have great relationships? And yeah, so who matters. And you want to leverage it You want to leverage it. And you know, and I think really part of it has to do with the fact that it's such a hard industry, not to suggest that other industries aren't as challenging, but this one is such a hard industry that that people, it's really important during the stress that the people are at the top of it, are in the, who are running the room, are working with people that they want in the room, meaning actual personalities, energies, things like that. It is just easier to get through the madness. It's easier to get through 10 of 12s on Broadway before opening, or the golden hours, you know, of a shoot with dancers and actors and everybody on set. It's easier to get through those things when you know that the people you're working with are not going to be adversarial to the process, right? And so so it becomes about, we're hiring these people not necessarily because they're the best in the room. They might be, and oftentimes they are, but it's because we know that these people are going to be the least stressful. They can do the job and they're the least stressful. And that is part of the reason that the who you know thing matters, right? So I definitely think that that's critical to understand, right or wrong. I see another one in here. The IRA plan is great for independent artists. Yes, yes, absolutely. There are a few different kinds of IRAs. There's a Roth, and the Roth. The thing that we like about the Roth is that it's the one that doesn't have a tax consequence on the other side, meaning you're not taxed on the gains that you, or you're not taxed on the principal. I don't actually think you're taxed on the gains either, for contributions made to your Roth over time. Now, the disadvantage is you can only put, I think they've increased the limit. It used to be 6,000 a year. It might be 6,500 now, but there's a ceiling on how much you can put into a Roth IRA. And that will then inform. So you start doing the math and finding out what that looks like, you know, all the way down the line. And I can get into that a little bit later in terms of inflation and all of that, for retirement, because of course, what all of this stuff about the W-2 and 1099 and the taxes and all that stuff bring up is what is at the end of that, we had a 401k, which was your retirement. So what Kayla's talking about is the idea that there are all kinds of vehicles that you can have that will contribute to your retirement, right? And so, yes, an IRA is one of them. I love a Roth. I think that those are great. There are only three of all of them, of all vehicles for financial growth in this country. There are only 3 of them that don't have a huge tax consequence or some kind of tax consequence on the other side. And those are municipal bonds. And the best way I can describe those or some of those are, remember savings bonds? Does anybody remember those when you get the little savings bond, you know, you want it for a competition or something as a kid and it has like $50 on it. That's the face value. And in 30 years, it will actually get to the full 50. It will mature to the full $50 because the interest rate is so low that it's going to climb very, very slowly, penny by penny to that amount, right? Those are fine. You don't have to pay. Those are fine. Municipal bonds, Roth IRAs, which we just talked about, and insurance policies. Insurance policies with cash value. Those do not have, or well, any insurance policies, they do not have a tax consequence on the other side. So if you're using, so that's what a lot of folks will use to supplement or become the bulk of the retirement. You put money into that, and the idea being that the growth is better over time. And so yeah, that's all of this is stuff to know. Because what that actually takes you to is this idea that we need to do it. We need to not wait. We need to not, because the money is growing over time, right? And so we can't afford to wait until 65 to go, okay, now what am I going to do about this? I'm gonna briefly pull this back up. What are we going to do about this? We need to figure out what we're going to do about this question mark over here, because this 401k, which is this sort of standard. The reason it's called a 401k is it references the part of the tax code, the line of the tax code that makes it possible, right? But it's your pension, it's your retirement, and And so if we don't have one of those, or if this one's not big enough, because I have a little bit from SAG-AFTRA, maybe, and I don't actually. I have a little bit from equity, and I have and I can't put money into my equity 401k, because the only way that money can go into it is when I'm working a job that money is coming out of the check, and that's the only way I'm going to get it, right? So since I can't do that, then at my 401k, if I'm not working under something that would give me a pathway to it, then it's going to stop accumulating. It's just going to grow based on interest, which won't help me too dramatically. So I need something else. And because all of that stuff happens over time, I can't wait until I'm 65 to go, okay, so where's my retirement? Yeah, that's exactly what that's the answer. It's no is the answer. Let me pull up this other chart that will show. Here we go. Share screen again. So this is an inflation chart. One inflation chart, okay? And inflation is 3% annually. So the idea is that everything is 3% more expensive every year. And so this shows you what $100 is going to be worth. Right now, today, $100 is $100 is $100, right? That's in this first one, right? And then you see that on the right side, 134, 181, 243, 326, 438. That's what's necessary to maintain the purchasing power that I have with $100 right now. And then in this other column, and then there's this other column, this shows 74, 55, 41, 31, 23. Those numbers show you what $100 will be valued the same as at that point in the economy, right? Well, you see, that's not working out in anybody's advantage if the pay that we make doesn't reflect this trend. Now this is obviously it's 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, 50 years. So we're going over a period of time, but the idea is over 20 years, well, let's say 30 years. If you're 35 and you're planning to retire at 65, then in 30 years, your $100 today will be worth $41. So it's already not working out in my mind. It's already not cute. So you have to do something, or I shouldn't say you have to, but we want to try to do something to offset that. And so when you're planning, the savings account doesn't have enough interest on its own to get, well, you all, I'm sure everyone, most people have taken a hard look at your savings to see how much more you have this year than you had last year if you didn't touch it. It's very minimal growth, right? So we're not going to be able to save money and then just hope that it takes care of the inflation part. It won't. We know that mathematically. So then the goal is, how are we going to retire? What are we going to put away for retirement? How are we going to start that process? And where do we need to put it? So I always suggest we'll start with Roths and start with insurance policies. Start there. Shameless plug, I am an insurance broker, so I write those policies actually. But it has to be with a broker in your state, who is licensed in the state. Insurance is a state-driven industry. I'm licensed in 7, so don't rule me out. That's all I'm saying. Don't rule me out. But you want to have the conversation with someone about this part. Do not, if you're in your 20s, this is a great time to have the conversation, because you know what? Insurance companies are looking at you going, oh, well, unless this person is reckless or hang gliding or a pilot, that's a whole other conversation. Then the risk is low. This person is probably going to we're going to have plenty of time to make money on this person's money. So yes, we're not going to charge you a whole lot for the cost of insurance right now. Let's start the policy, and then and then you're paying into it. You can decide how that's going to go. It has to be custom, right? But the idea is, you don't want to wait until way down the line to start thinking about what that is, and how that's going to work for you. You want to figure out how you're going to live at age 65, at age 70, at age 75. Also understanding that if we're on trend with any of the science fiction I've been watching lately, which is all a lot of it very, very, very well explained, then we're going to live longer.
Mhm.
And if we live longer, we're needing our resources to stretch farther. And for some people, I don't want to rule out other careers. I mean, I just said I'm an insurance broker. We'll talk about all of that in the next, look at us, Patch. We're just plugging
I know, it's just
session.
all organic.
It's so organic. It's
Well,
great.
the idea that you've already, even within the business, you've had multiple income streams, right?
Yeah.
Ways of working and getting paid, which you have to manage as the business of you. And then recognizing that adding another income stream from something that you have more control over,
Right.
is how we talk about that at the Career Center, right? It doesn't mean it doesn't really minimize your identity or your brand,
Right.
as a performer and dance maker, that you have another source of income. And I think you're such a good example of that. And that's what we'll talk about more next week. But also knowing this also protects you as the performer. I mean, this is all information that's helping you to continue your dance related work. So
yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And one of the, and we'll talk about a lot of that next week. But one of the things with this whole idea of the future and what that looks like and whether or not we're taken care of, is the idea that the things that are in place, even outside of that, Medicare and Social Security, if you look at your checks, your W-2 checks, they'll take out for that. And they're taking out for that because at age 65, you will have paid into Medicare long enough to then qualify to have that part. You hope that you paid into it enough to qualify for Medicare, so that you have medical insurance.
Tell everybody to go vote. Is this the point at which we
yes, because now you can bring it to that, Patch. Absolutely.
Please
Go
vote.
and vote. Find out who are the people on the ballot, and I mean all of them.
Want to protect entitlements. This is what we call entitlements, and they're a piece of the puzzle.
I'm good. Yes, absolutely. You want to know that. Those things. For example, I can give you a quick example that just happens to be on here. Yes. Okay. So let's just share screen again. I'm going to be so good at this by the end of the Zoom. I'm going to be so good. So, all right. So in this chart, let's go back. This was the chart that shows you how much, what the percentage of money that the IRS wants from you, at any given time. You'll notice that there's one here for what is that, 10%, and then there's a 12% rate, right? And then it jumps from 12% to 22%, right?
Yeah.
There used to be a 15, I think it was 15 or 18, I think it was a 15% rate right in here in between that would make a big difference in the tax liability, right? Or the percent. I mean, that's what it would be. There used to be a 15%. One of the presidents got rid of that. One president, not the one sitting in the office right now, the other one got rid of the 15% tax rate. So what that now affects is how much, how much do I owe? And if I made, a certain amount of money, we just got rid of it altogether. Well, that doesn't hurt anybody except the people who fall into that bracket, who fell into that bracket before and have a lower tax liability because that percentage existed. But now if you're over this amount of money, you're taxed at 22% at minimum. More obviously if you make more, but that's how that works. So the voting matters, because if that's something that you're concerned about, then yeah, you gotta know that, and then you want to vote However, you know, in with obviously all of the things that make up a vote or make up, you know, your support for a candidate in on any level, civically, nationally, whatever, that's a consideration. How does it actually, on a very, very basic level, how does it affect your paycheck?
Right.
You know, that's a big deal. And a lot of people vote based on that.
Right.
Yeah, I have a friend who just picking up on something else earlier, Patch, in terms of creating income streams. I have a friend who told me years ago, she says, I don't dance at all anymore unless there's a royalty or a residual involved. She says, I'm not doing it unless I can get some money on the back end of this, you know, and that's another thing, is this idea of back ending, right? I can't, you know, sometimes I've worked for people who they don't have the money on the front. This is embryonic. I'm trying to develop this, whatever it is. You know, it stands to make a lot of money on the other side. It stands to make a lot of money on the other side. And if it does, great. Then if you can't afford to pay me up front what I'm worth, then let's make my back end percentage big enough that if this moves on or if it gets bigger, regardless of whether or not I'm a part of it, because of my work here, my investment in it early on, I am going to reap something on the other side of it, right? Well, there's the best example of that I can think of inside of contract language is under equity, we have the workshop agreement, right? There's a workshop agreement and then there's a lab agreement. And under the workshop agreement, you know, producers bring me in to do this workshop. It's going to be 6 weeks. You're going to, or maybe less, it probably is more like 3 or 4 weeks. And we're going to pay you next to nothing. It'll be $650 a week or something like that. It's pennies. But it's because we as producers are trying to get this show to Broadway, right? All of this is just money up front. We have no idea whether or not it's going to go to Broadway. We have no idea if we're going to lose all this money. We're putting it up front, so we can only afford $650 for each of you. But you get to all split up 1%, which is 1 point of the profit share on the other side if it goes to Broadway. So when I was in The Color Purple, I did the workshop. It was a workshop contract under equity. So it had a right of first refusal, which means that meant that I get to go straight. If the show does go to Broadway, you got to offer me the job first. You know, all of us, we have to be offered the job. A right of first refusal, and it had a royalty on the back end. We got to split a point. So that meant that when all of that stuff was reconciled every quarter, or I think it was every quarter, after The Color Purple was doing well and it was on Broadway and all the initial investors got paid back their money, their initial investment, now we're just dealing with profit, we got to split 1% of that profit every quarter. So I would just see a check. Great, right? Later, the producers decided that they wanted another pathway to putting people in the studio, and other than the workshop agreement. And they said, you know, maybe we're looking at this the wrong way. How about we pay more money? I think that the lab agreement was at the time, this was a long time ago, people, I have no idea what it is now, but the lab agreement was something like $1,000, right? I will give you, rather than the $650, let's give you a little closer to what that work should cost, $1,000. That's not enough. But okay, we're gonna give you what that work costs. And then you'll get it, and we don't have to worry about the right of first refusal or the back end.
Right.
Don't worry. Well, then when that show goes from lab to, you know, a small venue to Broadway, and then makes, you know, all the money and runs forever, and you were on the lab agreement, you didn't get the back end because it's not in the lab agreement. So the producers won out in this case. Now, understand that the producers are always crying broke. Well, yeah, this one worked out, but I did 9 others. I invested in 9 other shows over here, and none of them worked out. So I lost all of that money. This is the bellyache on that side, right? So you got to do something for me, and then that was the concession for the union, that the union made. Here's a lab agreement. Well, guess how many workshop agreements got used by the producers after the lab agreement was born? Right. Right. And so then what happens is we go, well, why would the union allow that? Why would equity do, what, that's just awful, blah, 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 blah. And then it gets into, well, the committees who help to negotiate those contracts or who inform or advise lawyers who are working as staff on our behalf to fight their lawyers, the producers league lawyers, or in my other example, Disney lawyers. The lawyers, they do what we tell them to. And the we is the people who show up to the meetings, who find out what's going on, who sit on the committees. It's all people working in the, or not working, but who are union members. They're the ones who are making those decisions about what things are valuable inside of a negotiation process. So somewhere along all of that, the lab agreement was introduced as an option. And so the back end went away, right? But that's also that was the contract example. It's not something conceptually that you can't use in other jobbing and other things, choreography, show development, anything that's in development. The concept is get it on the back end. If you can't get it on the front, have some kind of language that holds the people you're working with or for or offering their project, offering on their project something accountable to a certain pay structure that will actually be fair and work for both sides.
Yeah, this is good. So I'm looking at the clock and I see we have a couple,
Yes,
another
that's a
question. So Meredith is asking, if we as mature dancers start to have the opportunity to offer master classes, how do we figure out appropriate pricing? Should they be priced differently for a private studio, like junior high or high school kids, or for a university setting? How do you set your rates for that?
That's a really, really, really
Yeah.
great question. And it's a hard one, Meredith. It's hard because you want to, I mean, I think most people who are fair start at something like what I tell people, dancers all the time, which is you want to make whatever it is you're worth relative to what the organization can afford. And by that, I mean very specifically, I danced for Lula Washington Dance Theater. I danced for Complexions at one point. I don't expect either of those two companies to pay me what Share pays me because they're nonprofits. So it's a totally different scenario than this one, than something inside of the commercial dance industry or the commercial or the entertainment industry all the way around. Because on this side of things, the goal is to sell something, and I'm supporting that. And so there's money being made on the other side of it. I need to make more, right? This Complexions and Lula Washington Dance Theater are dance companies that are not necessarily selling anything. There's not a commercial side of it. Yes, it's important that we look good and all of those things, and that you can market it and so that the company works, right? Or so that the companies work. Yes, of course. But the bigger idea is there's still nonprofits that are reliant not on ticket sales, because they don't actually support any company, really, shouldn't say any, there might be a few, but the majority of it is patrons, donors, people who are grantors, money that is free money that is coming, that is then tax deductible for the businesses or the individuals that are giving charitably, right?
So is there a way that you have in the past, like, ask
Figure out.
questions about what's your budget? What have people gotten paid in the past? Or can you?
Yeah, it's hard to do it's usually hard to, well, with the nonprofits, it's easy or easier because you can go there, they are required by law to publish their taxes. So you can go online and look up somebody's 990 and see the entire filing. It's what I did for the Ailey dancers when they were the artists of Ailey. They had sort of split off and were in the process of potentially striking. And they were already doing things. They were going, oof, yeah. And I was in full support. And one of the ways that I was supportive is I published the 990 that showed what the people in power were making at the time, so that people would have a reference point for why they were so upset. and not just a, a random something. That's different. Those are published. When you're dealing with other entities, it's not necessarily that easy. A lot of times what I'll do is start to canvas different people in the industry to find out who are working those kinds of jobs, to see what the norm is, to see if there is any sort of baseline or standard that we can start with. And those are kind of hard. With dance studios, what I find with dance studios, and this isn't a hard and fast rule, but studios across the country are using a metric that has to do with how the students are paying, right? So if it's a master class and they're bringing you in, then chances are they are marketing to not just the dancers who attend their studio, but the entire community. Such and such is coming to teach a master class, or Ebony Williams is going to be here for 3 hours doing a workshop on whatever, or Danielle Polanco is going to teach a heels class, and so everyone's invited. What they're doing is oftentimes the studio will charge an amount, whatever that amount is, per head for people to take the class. And so usually one of the things I like is a split, meaning let's do a percentage split. So whatever you're making, I make a percentage of that, and then it's all fair. That usually takes care of some of it, because the studio owners are going to have a really good sense of how much they can charge for your name based on all of the other people that they brought in. So if they brought in JoJo Siwa to teach a master class, I can't make what she makes, because the people are paying a lot more money to be in the room with her because of who she is inside of that space, and so I understand that, I get that. But so then what I start to do is go, what are people, my peers, making? I'll ask my friends, I'll call and ask them, what are you all making for master classes? And I try to ask, of course, the ones that I think I'm close to in terms of cachet, if you will, right?
Yeah, and I'll just throw in too, that's like any negotiation for pay. You want to get this information if you can, and you have to know about when you're ready to walk away.
Right.
This is because, like the comment that they want me to teach every week. Do you, first of all, want to? And then also, is it going to take away from other work? And also, are you then undervaluing yourself, in their eyes? So it's tricky. So there was, just because the time is going by, it's a great question, Meredith. Thank you.
Yes. And yes, she asked about the
we'll
split.
keep talking about it. How can we put choreography on the Oscar list?
Well, you know what?
It's getting there. It's going to get there.
It's getting there. I think that the guild, the Choreographers Guild, the formation of the Choreographers Guild, and just be clear on this, because since it's up, the only reason the choreographers aren't, or the main reason choreographers are not represented under SAG-AFTRA, is that there's a provision inside of federal labor law that says that you cannot have supervisors represented in the same union as their employees, the employees in their purview, which makes sense, right? I mean, like, I don't want my boss to be in the same union as me. Talking, no, you're generally speaking, right? So because that exists for obvious reasons, choreographer, it becomes a matter of convincing, the government that choreographers are not our supervisors, not over us, and that becomes tricky. There was an argument made a long time ago about stunt performers and how there's a stunt coordinator position available, but part of it is it's the organization of a stunt from a safety standpoint, from a whole lot of other places, and not necessarily the choreography of the stunt, right? Which is different. Anyway, I don't want to get into the weeds on it because I know we don't have a lot of time, but the point is that there are things in place for that. The Choreographers Guild was a response to, we need something to represent us. We're not members of SDC, the stage directors. I can't remember what that acronym is, but we're not. That's a different union. We're not able to be there, and so SAG-AFTRA. So then let's try to just make one. And what that guild will ultimately do is negotiate with all the same bargaining partners that SAG-AFTRA negotiates with, right?
Yeah.
And then by that point, I think hopefully when that gets to a little bit more mass, then we have a shot at, okay, are you awards programs going to start recognizing the work? Yeah, and then I think that'll be an easier conversation. I hope.
Yeah. Thank you. And we, as we said in the chat, we can continue these conversations next week. They're all important topics. But since time is winding up, I want to make sure that everybody knows that there's a part 3 coming up, and it's a couple of weeks away. So it's not next week, it's March 21. And you will go back onto the portal again where you signed up, so that you can sign up for that session on the 21st. And let's see if there's anything that we just miserably, part 1. So where we are recording, we have, sort of limited hands to put on everything, but we will be releasing the recordings to Jamal, so that Jamal will put them on jamalstory.com. And we also are looking to put them on our own portal for anybody coming in. These are programs. So we have your names. We know that you've registered and enrolled. So we will communicate with you directly when there's access and how to get to it. So
and please invite the older, well, not just older dancers, but especially us to the next one. Please,
yes,
let's show up for that one.
Yes, absolutely.
Because we're all there's some things that we're trying to figure out too.
Yeah. Well, it is a growing movement. And so, other than straight 32 fuetes to the left, you can move on from all that.
And that's yeah, I'm a lefty.
Yeah, just gonna say. So thank you, Jamal, and thank you everybody who came and asked the really good questions, and come back. And this is a conversation that we want to continue with all of you. This will be in place, but we want to keep building on it, and that you come to the fund for information and to share what you find out, because so much of what we're sharing with everybody is what our community is telling us. So we have Jamal, and we want everyone else to say, hey, I just found this out. How can I share it with the community? Because community is really, really the way that you do stay creative. It is through community. We aren't all in competition with each other. We're in this together, and we all have a lot to give. So I hope you stay tuned and you come back, and that we can keep this conversation going. And thank you so much, Jamal. You're the best. Okay, everybody.
Welcome. I've had a ball as always.
Yeah, great conversation. Okay, everybody, have a good rest of your day wherever you are, and come back. Bye.